The ninth edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe and I'll be serving as your facilitator for this evening's conversation. Before introducing you to our guests, let me, as per usual, say thank you. Thank you for letting us into your homes. Thank you for allowing us to share part of your Monday evening. So whether you're relaxing in the living room, probably laying in bed, driving your cars, looking at whether it is us on GBN television, listening on GBN radio, or any of our social media platforms, thank you for having us being a part of this your Monday evening. As you're aware, we have a big holiday coming up on Wednesday, and it is not just a holiday, people. I know sometimes we just resign ourselves another public holiday and we plan what is the next beach line. It is May Day, Labor Day, as I will refer to it this evening, and we have a number of representatives from our trade unions and the Trade Union Council with us this evening. I will invite them to introduce themselves, the union that they represent, and their executive position on the TUC if they so hold one. I typically would say ladies first, but I will start from my extreme left and then come closer. So Cephas, you're up.
Good evening, the masses. A pleasant evening. I'm happy to be here. I am the president of the Grenada Seamen and Waterfront Union. I'm a trustee of the Trade Union Council, and it's a pleasure to be here on the program tonight.
Okay. Daisy?
Good evening, Grenada, wherever you are, whatever you might be listening on. I'm Daisy Hazard. I'm PRO of the Grenada Public Workers Union, and I'm the PW representative, well, one of the representatives on the TUC.
Okay. You know, typically we would say the rose between the thorns, but you have a daisy between the thorns this evening. All right, so we still will keep with the flowers.
Well, the thorns are sometimes more interesting, but...
We're not going to start that type of fight here. No, the union always look, this is not a struggle.
Okay.
It's a done deal, that's it.
Okay. All right, so my name is Bert Patterson. I'm the General Secretary of the Trade Union Council, first of all, and also the General Secretary of the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union. Tonight I'm a whole role of Union Council because May is in fact organized by the TUC, whereas the unions have individual activities, but the main item is actually organized by the TUC. Okay. So I'll put that portfolio out front.
I hear the portfolio. I'm not going to let you off the hook just yet. But we're celebrating. So it's really looking at recognizing the contributions of the labor movement and contributions to 50 years of nation building. In essence, that's the theme. And from each of you, as you reflect on the last 50 years, first as union, and union is what got you to the TUC, that's why I'm not letting you off the hook, Bert. First, as starting with you, Dowe, as you look back on the last 50 years of the work that Dowe has done, point us to one or two things that you are proud of that the Technical and Allied Workers Union have been able to achieve over the last 50 years. And I would ask this of each of you, PW and Seamen and Waterfront.
We would be very proud to say that the wage levels in our union, of unionized workers on the whole, and our union, compared to the wage levels of workers who are not unionized, you can't compare the difference. The difference is so far, and the only difference is that these workers are unionized. Right? We have benefits like profit sharing, which we may speak to a little later, because there is some threats to profit sharing where we have it. We have it in several workplaces. At least one of the banks, we have it in Grenada Electricity Services, we have it in Grenada Breeze, we have it in Gravel and Concrete, but it is under threat. And we're very proud of that. We're also very proud that a lot of the workplaces where we have workers and not the very small ones, but the major workplaces, they also have health insurance, which is absolutely necessary in this day and age, because no one can find $70,000 or $100,000. You'll have to go around with a bus somewhere or a truck on a Saturday. And the workers we generally represent, not all, most of them have that. So I would say you just have to look at our agreements and the things that are in our agreements. You would see them, you may see them in some other unions' agreements. So I'm not differing because CMN may even have better conditions than us. But generally, the workers who are with us and who are unionized have vastly better conditions than workers who are not unionized.
Okay. Daisy, I heard high salaries, profit sharing, health insurance from Dowe. What PW can say? Proud over the last 50 years in terms of your accomplishments.
It's interesting, Colin, because I'm fairly new to the labor movement compared to someone like Brother Birth, who is an institution. But as my union prepares for the May Day, for the Labor Day celebrations, we've been reflecting according to the theme on our union. And when we're looking at the contribution of labor, we're seeing popping out of us that a lot of the people in our society now, persons who have gone on to hold high offices, persons who are chairing boards and foundations today, persons who have been ministers of government, a lot of them cut their teeth in leadership at the level of union. Mm-hmm. We even have persons, and I don't want to call a wrong name, but I think last night I saw one of the names, I think it was Nicholas Braffett from our Sister Isles at some point would have been a member of our union. We had Honorable Oliver Joseph also at some point. So a lot of the leaders in our country, be it politically, be it socially, be it at other levels of the country, they would have passed through the PWU. So I would say that the PWU seems to be a breeding ground for future leaders of our country. Mm-hmm. We have also secured medical benefits for our members by agreeing with government that they would part pay into a medical plan for our members. Very recently, we moved over from the provider that we've had for a number of years, and we moved to a new provider, that's CG United. It's something our union is proud of. Moving is hard. Once you've established relations with an organization, when you have to move, it's hard. But we looked at the benefits that were coming to our members, and we felt it was time to make a move. So we've also secured that. We have a number of collective bargaining agreements, CBAs, that range back from the 80s. Now, a worker listening in today would say, what does that have to do with me? Once an agreement is signed with the government and people of Grenada under any administration, once that is signed into law, it applies to every single worker. So any worker today can look at all of the agreements, I think there are about 5 or 6 of them, and look into them to see what are the provisions that are made for me, what can I take advantage of. And there's a lot of them, from study leave. Recently we instituted a death benefit, which we seem to have difficulty collecting, but is there. And we've seen that since we signed that agreement last year, so many of our members who have not, there's about 4 members who have not reached the majority, but died. And their families, their children, if they have minor children, can get a cushion for the next year. Mm-hmm. And so there's the issue of health and safety, which is never an issue that is finished. How workers, how they outfitted on the job. Even during the pandemic, we were able to sit with the then administration and develop a flexible policy, which is still now operational for workers who might be working in a blended format, or even we are seeing workers who are now have been hired into the public service and have never stepped foot into an office because they are working in the virtual space. And so there's a lot of benefits and a lot that our union have done for our members. And I want to chorus Bert by saying, was there not a PWU in place? I dare say that our members would be far worse off than they are today. And that's just some of the benefits.
No problem. We'll be able to get into some more. But see first?
Yes, but though, when I look back for 50 years, one of the hallmarks that come to mind is our perseverance, our patience. I have to say patience. Come down from people like Brother Eric Pierre. the struggle that we had with shipping agents, and because of our strategic position where we are on the port, the importance of what we do, maintain the peace, stability, education. I heard it said in certain corners and certain circles that when Brother Pay had died, that they want to see what we will do now. But Brother Pay had placed strong emphasis on education. And he had the likes like Cyril St. Louis, Brother Cyril St. Louis, Brother like Samuel, who had taken up the mantle in a very serious way. I like to think and perceive myself as the thing that interests me the most is warfare. And trade unionism, industrial relations is a type of warfare. That's how I look at it. And those two brothers there who has just left the union, what they do and what they did for us. I can say that when I look back, I have to say that our achievement, being able to hold our position, being able to negotiate collective agreement, bargaining agreement, with good conditions. I wouldn't want to get into all the details there, but salary-wise, I have to say that we have done a good job. We're able to hold our end, and that probably the perception, that Stevie Dowe, that they think of us, we're able to put at the risk.
Okay. But let's think in terms now of the TUC. And over the last 50 years, what are some of the things you can point to that the TUC has accomplished that brings great pride to you as a long-standing member and certainly now as the current General Secretary?
The present Labour Code was written in a tripartite arrangement. But I must say the majority of the input into that, which is the law that covers labor in Grenada, came from the TUC or the TUC appointees. In fact, it took 12 years of discussions, arguments, and all that to come about. It came about in, it was passed in 1999
yes.
and enforced in 2000. But 12 years before that, the wars, as my comrade puts it, started, right? And I think that without the input of the TUC and its appointees then, the present labor laws would not have looked the way it is, because it does, compared to some others in the region, right? It does seem to be fairer in some ways than that of other laws that have been gone into effect in our regional situation. Another thing that the fact that we're here, and let me see, we're here representing 7 unions. The TUC represents all the functional unions in the island. And the fact that we've been able to do so in this area where arguments are natural, right? We may be the only island that you still have one umbrella body covering the trade unions. So in Trinidad, you have over 3, right? Barbados, 2, and could be split further. Guyana, about 3 again. So we're very proud that with all our fights, and we do have internal fights because we're human. You have it at your home, I might have it at my home. Well, I can't talk for you, but I might have it at my home, right? And with all those fights, we are very proud to say that no, so we have, when there's matters relating to the Labour Advisory Board, we have one body that decides and sends representatives. NIS, same, there's one body, so there's no hustling, whether it's you or me or the other party or so. We have one body who decides all those things. So we've been extremely successful, I would say, compared to the umbrella bodies outside of Grenada.
Let me just ask you this. What do you believe is responsible for the split in leadership within the other islands that does not exist in Grenada? Because one would think that unions certainly would want to put their heads together because they are fighting for a common cause. Why they seem not to be able to get together as an umbrella body in the other islands like you have been able to do here?
The answer is kind of confusing to me also, because politics is generally responsible for the divisions. Although I'm not saying in any way that our politics in Grenada is less caustic than the other islands or the other territories, but we've been able somehow to get by, and there is politics, and there's always politics trying to split us up. That doesn't stop. That is now, that is before. It's always been the case. Since 1951, in fact, that's been the case, because you had some unions in the rural sector, meaning the care union, who supported it, and some of the biggest enemies were not only the employers, but the other unions and commercial unions. So you always had those splits. None of you may be old enough to remember the 70s, right? When Gary was the prime minister and his union, well, he and his union were the prime minister, put it this way, right? And in fact, Gary's biggest detractors were in fact people like Seamen at the time, Dowe at the time. So the politics is the thing that breaks us apart, and not only in trade unionism, but seemingly everywhere else. So politics, there's no other thing. That's why it has not worked in most territories.
Okay. Steve, first let me come to you as we reflect on the 50 years. And has the role of the union evolved? And my follow-up question to all of you is, how have you adjusted, if it has? But do you believe that the role, that struggle that you spoke of, that existed in 1974, does it exist in the same way in 2024? Or is it a different fight? And are you equipped to carry on this new fight, if in fact that is the case?
Well, certainly we are equipped. First point, we are equipped to deal with any situation, any scenario. That's the first point. Secondly, evolve. The basic things remain the same, I would say. What we want for the workers, what we want to achieve as a union, the defense, the improvement of our working conditions in all different aspects, what we would want to see go on in the union in terms of, well, we stress a lot on education. We now have people with us from TAMCC who are quite, they are certified in maths and English, and we're happy to have them among us. And as a matter of fact, we have 3 of them right now in Cipriani College. So for the last 50 years, what Brother Eric Pierre and so on had laid down, and Brother Cyril St. Louis and the others had taken up, Brother Lyle Samuel, Brother the past president, Stanley Roberts, and so on has done. We have continued with that, and we intend to continue that. As a matter of fact, one of the hallmarks of when I won the election was that I would place a strong emphasis on education. It is paramount for me. We need to know and understand and learn that art in that warfare in industrial relations, so that we can continue what has happened since the last 50 years come up from the 60s. Right now is a different generation as compared to what was the ideology, back in the 70s, the 80s. Well, one of the other youngsters in the pioneers, who had clenched my fist to heaven and said, "Long live the revolution." And I had loved the ideology and the thinking of the revolution and the armed forces, and it has embedded in me, and it has stayed with me and in my thinking. But the generation today, they are different. You could see it in them, the interest in trade unionism or in other things. I think they are more after the electronics. They spend too much time in that.
But why is that? Isn't that, I will ask, whether it is a seniors problem rather than a youth problem? And I say that from the standpoint is that if these values that you're speaking of were not imparted to them, where would they get it from? I don't believe that they grew up in a foreign place or foreign planet and then were brought to Grenada. Well, they grew up here.
I will tell you this. My kids, I brought them into the cadets. Imelda Cambridge, because that is what and the discipline in there. We believe in that, brought them into that. But they don't really have much interest in that. They don't like the bush. They don't like the gun. The discipline. They prefer the gadgets. I have to say so. As a matter of fact, they drop out of it. I can't keep pushing them into what they don't like, but I expose them to everything, the football and this and that. But something that was so close to my heart was the cadet corps, the police force. That kind of a thing. That is a line that we are in. But you tell them about it. I sit and I talk to them all about the revolution, all what went down, and the importance of being able to sit down and to read and spend more time reading instead of being on the gadgets, and the struggles, what had happened. Maurice Bishop closed when they had showed it to us after he was beaten up. It had stayed with me. October '83. The 19th, and you take them through it, but it's distant to them. I find, some of them, especially in my case, I find they're distant. We had all interest in the Vietnam War very strong. Every day we want to know what's going on down there. So that's it. So I think probably the generation is different. The things now are different.
Daisy, let me bring you in here. I don't expect you to speak about what was happening 50 years ago. All right, so you went wrong, you wouldn't know. But the evolution in terms of the role of trade unionism, speak to us a little bit about that. Some things that you believe are important. If the union is to adapt, they need to adopt in order to remain relevant.
Right. So, Colin, the world around us is changing, and it has always been changing. Every generation, the world is changing. And what fashions us, what fashions how we respond and react and interact with our environment is the technology of the time. In today's world, what is driving the world is Web 0.2. As a matter of fact, the IT people, they would say it's no longer 0.2, and all of those applications. So we can't fight that. What has not changed is the idea and the ideology of struggle, that labor as an organized movement is about representing workers, ensuring that workers have decent standards of work, that workers are not discriminated against in the workplace, that workers get just compensation for work. So that's the platform, that's the premise on which the ILO, as a United Nations agency, was founded in 1919. That has not changed. If you go back 50 years ago, workers want decent work. They want decent pay. They want decent conditions. If you come today, forward today, they want the same thing. Now, some of the conditions have changed. So how do we as a union respond to that? How do we understand the needs of our workers and respond to that? We have to use technology. We have to use the modern gadgets. We have to use the modern influences that are around us so that we can reach our workers, we can meet them, we can educate them, and we can fulfill their needs. It's an uphill task. Sometimes I stand up and I take a deep breath and I think, am I sufficient to this task, to this role that I've been placed in? And I'm saying that for all of us at this time. When you look at the labor force, a lot of workers say to you, what do I need a union for? I don't need a union, but they perceive that they do not need a union because today they are enjoying all of the benefits that were fought for 50 years and 70 years ago by men who came out of the oil fields and men who came out of the cane fields. And they would say, well, if they were listening to me, they would say, that's history. But that is a history that has ensured that you have a work day, a lunch hour. That's the history that ensures that when you're on your lunch hour, you have a decent lunchroom. That's the history that ensures that you have a proper desk and chair. The desk and chair that sufficed even 20 years ago, we will tell you now that it has to be ergonomically designed, which means that when I get up after sitting 8 hours, my chair should have been so built and engineered and designed that I shouldn't have as much of a backache as I might have had 20 years ago. We're looking at persons coming into the labor force more qualified in Grenada and the region. So we have graduates coming out of universities. 20 years ago, persons were coming out of IFE. 40 years ago, they were coming out of Standard 7 and going back into teaching Standard 7. And so graduates now can command a better paycheck. They're taking advantages of all of the gains of labor, but they forget that, listen, this has been earned. And
let me ask you though, but has labor evolved to make themselves relevant for that new constituency?
So we're here because labor has evolved. Because as a younger unionist, I could have said, I don't need to join a struggle. I'm okay hey, these guys have gone ahead of me and fought, so let me just sit back. But I'm here, and I'm using the tools, I'm using the advances of technology to reach my members, to interact with my members. So yes, labor is evolving. And is it ahead of the curve? I would say no, but nowhere in Grenada are we ahead of the curve in technology. We're catching up, and we're struggling to catch up every day in this country.
Relevance of labor in 2024, Bert?
Sad to see. Very sad to see. We just follow the leaders outside. And that is so relevant here. In other words, when what we refer to now as globalization started, right, in the early 90s, because before it became publicized, right, it started as an economic theory, more or less, right? It was that the young people are educated. They can argue for themselves. If they work hard, they will be promoted. So they don't need unions. In fact, if you were to follow the world we normally follow, the United States and the UK, unionized workers drop steeply,
right,
even more than in Grenada and in the Caribbean, during the period, say, 1995 to 2 or 3 years ago. And one of the reasons was, as Daisy is saying, our success beat us to our point. Meaning, a worker leaves secondary school now, or leaves TAM-CC, and goes to work with Grenlec. The conditions there are not because the boss liked him or the board liked them. The conditions there is because we fought for them and fought bloody fights to bring them there. But the youth don't hear that. Coming out of the days of what we used to call yuppies at the time. Some of us may not know that term, yuppies at the time, young, progressive, educated, etc. And they felt they could negotiate on their own. They were encouraged to believe that by the employer. What has happened over that 40 years, though, is that the employer has increased their benefits by 400%. And I'm quoting the BBC, by 400%, whereas the yuppies who I may have been one of at the time, we are still a little behind inflation. So compared to inflation, the employer class, right, and the shareholding class, they have increased their share by 400% in line according to inflation. If you deflect inflation, on the other case, we have either stayed with inflation or lost a little.
All right,
so,
it is time for us to take the first break, but I want to get back to this because I want to address the classes that you're referring to. Shareholding class, employer class, we'll get back to that. But viewers, it's time for our first break.
Third-party outages are caused by parties external to Grenada. Kite flying is one of the major causes of third-party outages also.
Kite flying over the years has proven to be an issue that has created many outages on our systems.
This Easter, Grenlec would like you to keep your kite in sight. Use an open area with no overhead power lines. Avoid personal injury through electric shock. Avoid damaging property and causing inconvenience through power outages. Enjoy tradition safely. Avoid damage and injury.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
But when you need someone to help you to your feet, I'll be that beacon to your highest peak. Oh, I'll be right next to you, no, I will never leave. Come on, take my hands, we got everything we need. Cause you can look to me, yes, I can. Whenever you're in need, yes, you can. Just call on me and I'll be on my way. I'll be by your side, never to divide. support you wherever you're rolling. We'll make your dreams come true. Next time, next time, next time, next day, oh.
Nexa Credit Union, with you wherever your road leads.
Beyond the headlines, we're talking labor, and we're recognizing the contributions of the labor movement in nation building over the last 50 years. Bert, let me just come back to you, because when we left off, you mentioned two classes, the employer class and the shareholders, recognizing that based on the stats you're quoting from the BBC, that the employers moved ahead of inflation by some 400%, whereas the working class were merely keeping up with inflation in the best circumstances, sometimes slightly behind. Exactly what you're saying, and I'm going to be cruder here a little bit, if you'd permit me. If it's their business, the money is theirs, and they pay a fair wage for the labor being provided, or they have union representation. But how much money they take home is not the business of the workers, really, but rather the worker, once they get the pay that they agree to, then that's their concern, not how much profit is made. Because if there's a loss and the bank start calling, is on the employers whose head is going to be hurting, not the employees.
I hear that, but let me use an example for you. Workers who are not unionized in Grenada, the majority of them had no increase in pay over the past 2011 to now, because the minimum wage didn't move. In all those businesses, their cost increased and their prices increased. And in fact, in most of them, they would tell you their cost increased because of labor. But labor cost did not increase in the majority of those who are not unionized, right?
But therefore, we do accept that the cost of business increased.
Yes.
And that was reflected in prices.
And we are told in negotiations the highest cost and the thing that makes it increase most is labor. We've heard that.
But that's in negotiations. That's not the people that you're referring to, though.
The persons we're referring to. So, for example, the security companies, etc., etc., etc. The major costs would be personnel costs. And I can assure you that the costs increase, right? Even though the wages didn't increase. So you have to say, even if someone is the owner, right? Is it fair that where your income, and BBC referred to it as executive income and took all those into consideration, right? That executive income, there is no question that the rich have gotten richer. Unless you live in somewhere other than on earth, everyone knows in most societies in the world, the rich got terribly richer. That's just a fact. No one can dispute that. But the poor and the middle income earners have not moved above inflation. They have not moved to say, okay, things are significantly better. So you have to decide if that's fair.
Things are not significantly better, or is it that the gap between the rich and poor, or the rich and the middle class, has increased? And let's make that distinction.
Okay. All right. Use Grenada. Let's use Grenada. During the 70s, if I remember correctly, the Prime Minister at the time, around independence, was making not much more than $1,000 a month, right? Persons in the private sector, that was considered a high salary. Okay? No. At the time, a general worker may have been making $200 a month or $300 a month if you're in the public service, etc. Now we have lots of people making $20,000 a month.
In the public sector?
Not in the public sector.
No, let's keep that comparison. Because
So I'm saying across the board, right? Across the board, you would have persons, but the rate that move from $1,000 to $1,200, let us say if I manage to have a private firm, up to $27,000, right? That has gone, has climbed steeper than the rate that the worker who worked then on the factory floor, who may now be at $1,500 or $1,800, because he moved with inflation. Meaning normally we get that 3% or 4% roughly inflationary cost a year, even when negotiated. But the executive owners didn't go there. They move much higher than inflation. And to the other part of your question, you have a right to your profits, but you have a right to pay people fairly.
Yes.
That is what our fight, that is where we fight.
Correct.
You have a right to pay people
Daisy,
fairly.
I seem to be hearing Bert saying that the unions have not been very effective in negotiating fair wages for their employees, because the executives who are out of union have moved from that $1,500 in 1974 to $27,000, whereas the $200 worker is only at $1,500. How would you respond to Bert on this?
Well, I don't think that Bert is saying that unions have not been very effective. I think what Bert has been saying is that what we've seen evolved in the labor landscape over the last number of years is that employers, persons who own businesses, seem to have attempted to separate out your executives from your laborers. So you pay them these high salaries, you give them bonuses, you give them emoluments, you ensure that they're cushy and comfortable.
Isn't that a reflection of the investment those employees would have made in themselves, and therefore bring a higher skill set and therefore more valuable to the
It's all
company?
part of the parcel, but stay with me, we're going. So it's all part of the parcel, and it's all part of the parcel of how the labor landscape has changed. And this is not just Grenada. This is regionally. If you read up on the labor movement across and the forces that have influenced it over time, when labor unions first started emerging in the Caribbean, Trinidad as an island state, they really fashioned the face of labor alongside Grenada as well. And that's because you had the oil fields and you had the oil workers and that sort of a thing. And labor and politicians would have looked to see that when these men started organizing, they're disrupting my business. I have to spend too much on them. And so to separate them out from the executives out from the laborers, they started paying them those highly inflated salaries and making them very comfortable. And then you saw something evolving in the labor landscape where it was said, well, persons who are in management and administration should not be part of the union. Now, yes, persons educated themselves. And again, in our region, we know that the majority of persons leaving school went into the labor force without a tertiary education. So the persons who had a tertiary education back then, and in the 50 years that we're talking about, were the fewer set of us in the population. We can talk about who had gone to university, who had gone beyond primary school education. Now we can't, because everybody's going tertiary. And so the factors of labor and the factors of production and the persons who own the factors of production, they ensured that they were comfortable by separating out executives from the mass of laborers. laborers. And that's the condition that we are facing today. So it's not that unions have not been effective. Unions have been effective in trying to ensure that the bulk of workers are protected. Because without the protections of union, we would have seen this. Because definitely at the level of management, most persons are happy, they're comfortable, and they're going to do what management wants them to do to secure their own jobs and their own cushy paychecks.
That's an accusation because
it's not an accusation. It's actually what has happened. It's not an accusation. It's what has happened.
So are you saying that they operate unethically in order to do so?
I would not say that they're operating unethically. I would say that everybody has been looking after their own niche interests. So the employers want to ensure that they earn more, but that their bottom line, their profit margins don't drop. As a matter of fact, every year they want more. And they want more with less laborers. They want more with less workers. And they force the executives at the level of management to eke out of laborers, less laborers, more. So everybody is looking after their own interests. So it's a sort of a dog-eat-dog situation.
But it would not be a case where the bottom line is compromised in so doing, because that executive will be fired.
No,
I'm not certain I follow your line of reasoning.
But you see, okay, let me just see if I can jump in here. And the notion is totally false that the executives educated themselves and the workers did not. And we can't take responsibility as unions for the fact that someone doubled their manager's pay when they were fighting us on the table and in the streets to say that if I bring your pay up by 1%, I will go out of business. And that I'm talking about practical things that have happened, and we all know of them. The other thing is that when I joined the workforce, and I can call some names here, in Grenada Breeze, more than a third of the workers could not write their name. They couldn't read and write. That's just a fact. The Coke factory was similar. All the factories know to get a job in one of those places, you have to come out of TAMCC. So it would not be correct to say that, okay, the management class educated themselves and the others didn't. So even if I got a doctorate and the job I could get is a job on a production line, they wouldn't pay me the same as they pay the manager. So it's kind of unfair to say that we didn't do our part because we don't fight for the managers. In fact, the managers pay themselves.
But why don't you fight for the managers?
Well, we do have some. Let me just say, we do have some workplaces where the manager, and that's a phenomenon.
Because managers are not owners.
No, because that's the phenomena has started some years ago, and there are several companies in Grenada now where the management have sought union representation. The other thing you have to look at is what is reversing. Let me see. Most of us know where the majority of computers in the Western world are made. Right? And 10 years ago, there were no high-tech companies in Silicon Valley or anywhere that were unionized. Now, practically all are becoming unionized in the Western world. Yeah. The reason being, and that answers your relevance issue. Your relevance issue meaning, if I work for Microsoft and I have a good salary 20 years ago, I still have that salary now. Whereas the owner of Microsoft has gone from a millionaire to a billionaire to a trillionaire. No, you have a right to your profit, but you have a right to pay the workers and let the workers come up with it, because it is the workers that make. Nothing creates profit other than labor. There is nothing on the face of the earth that can create profit, because if you have gold under this table, someone has to take it out. That is labor. So there's no profit without labor. And it has been so unfair, the world has been so unfair, that our success is losing now, because the greed of persons are driving people to come back to unions. And we have a pile of managers now in Grenada who are in fact unionized. I won't go into name calling. Right. We do have that.
See, first, let me bring you into the conversation, because you're the president of one of the few, I would say, trade unions in Grenada. Seamen and Waterfront, Longshoreman is a trade, and you represent those workers. Quite often we have seen other trades with no representation and continues to have no representation representation. So the minimum wage, for example, brought in some new categories of workers. The domestic workers got some increase. Those store clerks got some adjustments to their salaries as well. Why has the Seamen and Waterfront been so successful as a trade union, but there has been very little success in mobilizing domestic workers, store clerks, etc.? What do you think is responsible for that?
On the waterfront, it is a different atmosphere. Conditions are different as compared to who you just speak of there. In Seamen, the trade that we are involved in is very hazardous, is very serious. I could just give you one example quickly of in a training session we had where you see the ships, the container ships coming now, and you see on the deck these white tanks. If there are 16 of them, you see them on the deck. If there are 4, you see them on the deck. Before, they used to have them down in the hatch. Now, there was a situation where they were offloading the cargo, and they opened up the hatch, but the contents of one of these tanks leaked. And when the guy went down, within seconds, he fell. Or I went down to assist him, he fell. The supervisor outside, normally you call him a supervisor, here we call him a foreman, a general foreman. He noticed what was happening, called out to the third guy, don't go down, but he went, it's his brothers. So he went down to assist, and he stayed there too. The chemical that came out of the tank was called organ. So it displaces the oxygen. Once you breathe it in, it stays in your lungs. So our trade is so serious that these brothers did not go back home to their families. As simple as it is. They came out to work in the morning, and that was it for them. This is the seriousness of what we're dealing with. A domestic worker, to mobilize them, they really, and it comes back to the atmosphere, I think, has changed, from 50 years gone. The struggle, from the Gary, and you have the marches, although we had some of it 2 years gone by leading up with teachers and so on. But the atmosphere has completely changed. So the interest, if you reach out to some of them to try to organize them and so on, I find they have a laissez-faire attitude towards it, while some may show interest and want to become part of it. But right now we see that there is a surge in persons, right now as the media is on, who come forward to us and are looking to become part of the union, and we will take that very seriously, who is not directly dealing with what we deal with, but they have recognized the importance of having representation on the job and so on. And we have to find a way, like the program we have in here now is very important. As Rosemary may be listening, to reach out to some of these sponsors and to get them aware of the importance of having representation in the job. Now, a company comes in to Grenada. My thinking, based on my knowledge, I know, is one of the best and first thing to do is to have unionized workers. But there is a tendency to drift away from that. Even the companies that are here, we represent West Hall Estate, and there are new workers, you want to bring them in. There's a tendency not to encourage that on the compound. They don't want to, but it would be a lot easier to solve issues, to address concerns, collective bargaining and so on. When there is, so if you have all of your people are unionized, then you have some, or you don't have it at all, because take care of your things, what we call high moral. So it's something that we have to address, and a program like this here will go a long way in helping some of these workers out there who are in the field that you talk about, the low-income wages, so that they can understand the importance of what we're doing and reach out to us.
Daisy, I don't know if I'm correct, but if I'm to hedge a bet, I would like to think that the majority of public officers might actually be female if it's not 50-50. You may have the gender breakdown of the union, but I certainly would want to know what specifically the union has been doing in recognizing the gender-specific needs of its membership.
Right, and Colin, allow me to just jump back into the previous discussion on domestic statistics for 1 minute. Perhaps because I'm female and I'm a recognizable face in labor, when I step out into the society, if I go into a supermarket, if I go to a variety store, I walk along the fish market, I pull up for gas, there is not a week that goes by when one worker or the other says to me, "Miss, which union am I under?" And I have to say, "You're not unionized." "Miss, can we talk with you?" I've had people saying to me, "Can we come to your union and purchase a Mayday jersey?" We want to be unionized. I went to town last Saturday. Persons approached me and said, "I want to go home. I'm over 60." And the lady telling me, "You're strong, still work still. But I know I reached my time to retire." But there is no union. So there is a timidity. There is a hesitance because they're isolated out. If you're talking about a housekeeper, about a maid, they're providing service in a house somewhere. They're not speaking to other maids. They may not know who the other maids in the area
But that was exactly my point.
That's the point.
That's exactly my point. Why are trade unions adopting these tradesmen and women? They seem to wait for a successful business and then jump in. And I would say,
again, Colin, it goes back to our labor code. It goes back to how a person can be unionized. It goes back to how workers can be identified and brought into a union. So maybe that's an area of our labor code that we have to look into, and Bert may pay attention to it later. But I'm saying to say that there's a difference in the sort of a landscape, in the sort of a temperaments, and perhaps even the educational levels. But they do want representation. And I think even during the COVID, we saw tradesmen in the beauty industry, for instance, coming together. And I remember addressing another union, I think it was Bank and General, and I said to them, "That's a ripe opportunity for you. That's a ripe marketplace. These ununionized or non-unionized workers in various industries." And so perhaps it's time that somebody pay attention. So going back to the question that you asked me, yes, it's not just the PWU, it's not just the membership of the public service membership. When you're going to our schools, I was at a junior school on Saturday, and the majority of girls marching, the majority of girls playing the tug of war. Sorry, the majority of students, and I'm saying girls because it was girls. And I looked at the girls trying to be the ballast for the tug of war, and I looked at these boys, and I knew these boys didn't even know how to plant their feet in the soil to get back. And I knew they spend too much time in front of the gadgets, and they're less than the girls. But even when I was teaching 16, 17 years ago, the class sizes are always predominated more by girls than by boys. So how do we cater more for the females amongst us? I do not know that we have directly done that, except to say that in the trade union movement over the years in PWU, the majority of the executives are always or is always female. So we may have 3 men alongside us. We might have the token 4, but the majority of us would be leaders. And so by virtue of the fact that we are the women representing labor, we cater for females. But we have to do more. I happened to spend the last 2 days at the General Hospital with a sick relative. And although I've been there, although I visit, being there in a different capacity allowed me to see a lot more that sometimes I do not see with my union cap on. And I saw the plight of our maids. I met a maid. She has had surgery on her hand because of pushing them up. She has had surgery on her leg because of standing around pushing them up in bucket. And she's still there pushing them up in bucket. And I'm thinking, why didn't management move her into somewhere else, given that by occupational hazard, she has had to have likely 2 surgeries, and she's still there, and she's only 48. And I looked at her and my heart bled because I thought, she has to go to 65 on a minimum wage. And her wage did not change when the minimum wage in Grenada changed. Her wage did not change. And it bled my heart. And so definitely, I know one of the things I want my union to do is to focus a lot more on our women. But Colin, when we travel to regional conferences and labor, the focus is always on women. And I had to say in Belize last year, I do not think we can keep focusing on women unless we bring in our men, our brothers with us, because then the women will also always be fighting for women, and there's no men alongside us. So it's always a struggle, it's always a fight. How do you balance, and how do you ensure that there's equity in representation, and at the same time bring up your groups, be it male or female, that has to be brought up.
So as we speak of the evolution of trade unionism in 2024, this is one of the things that you probably ought to be taking going on.
Yeah.
Well, the men might need assistance now.
Yeah.
Because they're being left behind.
Well, they're
and
leaving
you could see
themselves
from the school, the school situation, the public school situation. You go to the secondary school, you go to the tertiary education system, and you would always see that the girls are more in numbers and performing better. So probably by next year when we come here, we might say your question might be different. What we can do for the men.
Well,
let me say we do it because let me say the last TUC week we actually had men's health. All the years we've been doing women's health, we actually had men's health education and got doctors to come to speak to men because some of us don't like to go to doctors, etc., etc.
None of us. That's beautiful.
Right. And it was they fight with me to go last week. But anyway, but I'm saying that it may very well mean that the men may need some assistance to pull their bootstrings up. Not going back, but because we represent not only the unionized workers, we see TUC, although we have 7 affiliates, we don't see ourselves as representing only the unionized workers. We see ourselves representing all workers, because when we have representation on whatever, if it is the NIS board or the Labor Advisory Board or any of the boards, when we speak, in fact, we speak more because we are protected. The unionized workers are protected. We speak more to the workers who are not protected because the act and the law is more necessary for those workers because we have contracts that are way above the standard of the law. And the sad thing is that the workers you refer to, like the domestic workers and the workers in some of the, let me just say retail stores, right? They are so easily replaceable. That is the problem. And not only in Grenada, Jamaica has had a little more success in getting the domestic workers to form an association, which is active, but still you have one person working in somebody's kitchen out in somewhere far, and that person are even afraid to raise the matters that the law gives them right to. If they are to start speaking of being unionized or joining an association, or somebody from an association calls the employer, they're gone. There's no protection. Okay. So that's the basis of the problem.
Let me ask quite quickly, because as you said, TUC represents all workers. We saw the change to the minimum wage, I believe it was at the end of January. Are you aware of any fallouts? Because one can argue that the cost of labor has gone up to some employers, and they might be looking to shed themselves of employees to maintain their profit margin. So as a unionized workforce, there is protection. But for the ununionized worker, have you heard of any fallout as a result of the increase in minimum wage? Yes. Do you expect any?
Prior to it coming into effect, there was more talk of this. In fact, some employers had threatened that if the minimum wage goes to this amount, we would have to shed employees, which would mean those employees were not doing anything on the job. Because if you're in construction and you had 4 carpenters, right? And because the minimum wage goes up, you have to send home 2. Then you can't do the contracts you were doing before unless those workers were doing nothing on the job, which is not the case. So we have not had a big experience with persons sending workers home. We may have 1 or 2 incidents. The bigger issue is where we have, and some reputable employers who are refusing to put the minimum wage into effect. And that to us is a bigger problem. And I'm saying reputable employers who can afford it.
Well, I'm
And
not
in
going to
fact-
talk affordability, but you can't say reputable and saying operating illegally
Well,
because
recognized,
Oh, okay,
well-known,
well-known.
and
But
wealthy.
their products and services have gone up.
Recognized, well-known, and wealthy. Right? So we won't go into name calling here now. The placards come to the media and you see the placards, right? But it's sad because I can see with someone who has something by the side of the road and is paying one cook, right, or paying one salesperson, right, in a small shop. But when you have, like I say, large businesses that are doing this, knowing that they're breaking the law, knowing that those workers in some of those workplaces are not unionized, and knowing that the workers, in fact, the workers, they have been going to the Ministry of Labor. Those who are unionized will come to us, but a lot have been going to the Ministry of Labor with all sort of arguments from the employer why they shouldn't be paid.
Okay. All right.
Chime in a bit, just
sure.
I don't know how widespread it is, but I know of persons who, when that adjustment was made in the salaries, they said that they could no longer pay them, and they lost their jobs. I know of a couple of people who end up on the breadline with that.
Okay.
Like they have the seriousness of it, you know.
All right. All right, viewers, it's time to take our second break. When we come back, we'll zero in on the May Day celebrations, and you'll have an opportunity to contribute as well. We'll be right back.
Good evening, viewers and listeners. This is the National Lotteries Authority's Lotto Draw number 3648 for today, Monday, April 29th, 2024. I'm your draw hostess, Leslie Ann Johnson. Supervising the draw, Miss Kanife Edwards, who's representing RSO and Company Limited Accountants and Advisors. We're playing for $122,000 tonight, but of course, before we select our 5 winning numbers, we will select the free ticket letter. Letter is J as in jackpot. Check to see if it matches that on your ticket, and if it does, of course, you can claim your free ticket at your outlet of purchase. So we'll now select a nice 5 winning numbers for $122,000. Good luck to you. So let's recap for your benefit. We'll start with the free ticket letter, that is J as in jackpot. Our 5 winning numbers for $122,000 are 27, 27, 31, 31, 12, 12, 13, 13, 20, 20. If you are a lucky winner, congratulations to you, of course. Continue supporting the National Lotteries Authority. Have a great night.
On Saturday, May 4th, there will be a shift on the island as the biggest grilling fest in Grenada moves to the big parish. The Maggie King of the Grill competition is at Progress Park, St. Andrew. Come taste the most sumptuous creations from the grill as top chefs and food enthusiasts showcase their culinary skills. Maggie King of the Grill is a festival like no other with live soca music, fun attractions, and games for the entire family. Then from 6 p.m., get a chance to win up to $5,000 cash in bingo. Interested vendors and grillers should call 456-3454 to register. It's the Maggie King of the Grill competition at Progress Park, St. Andrew. Gates open from 12 noon. Bring your appetite and stay tuned to this station for more details.
It's the Maggie King of the Grill 2024. Powered by Maggie, the secret to great cooking. Rubis, the official fuel of King of the Grill. Hunt's, the official barbecue sauce of King of the Grill. Grenada Paper Products. Independence Agencies. Agents for Swiss Products. Grenada Bottling Company. Clark's Coats Cameron Spiced Liqueur. Bryden and Miners. And Waggity Rentals.
In
honor of the Grenada 50th Independence, the Royal Grenada Police Force Band presents the second annual Mother's Night Out. Mother's Night Out. The concerts all going down on Sunday, May 12th from 5 p.m. at the Grenada Trade Center. Featuring live from TNT. It's crazy.
Time to come. America will have a black president.
John King.
How many more?
June Lodge. Together with the Hitman Inspector, Valine Ned, Samantha Dixon, Alex Phillip, Shane, Innocent, General PP, Kareem, Alexis, Ron Barry, the African Man, and much more. Dress code elegant. It's Mother's Night Out, the Grenada Trade Center from 5 p.m. on Sunday, May 12th. Lots of giveaways and prizes to be won. Champagne and roses on entry. You don't want to miss this amazing experience for mothers. Your tickets only $70 and are available from Kittens Pharmacy in Grand Dance and Grenville, Grenadian Optical, the Police Band House, Police Canteen. Make this a date for mothers.
Your vision is our mission at Quartz Optical. Get 30% off frames and lenses, plus free eye tests for all throughout Healthy Vision Month. Get that frame today and pay later with Quartz Ready Finance. Book your free eye examination appointment online today on www.quartzoptical.com. Your sight is our mission. Only at Quartz Optical. Value you can see. Special conditions apply.
Angie, don't you know that you should not fly kites near electrical poles and wires? You should only fly it in open areas. If the kite gets stuck, it can cause power outages throughout the village.
Then I'll just pull it down, Johnny. Simple.
No, you shouldn't do that. You can get shocked. You should call Grenlec at 237 and they will come and help.
Alright.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're speaking labor with Labor Day, May 1st, coming up on Wednesday. Let us just hear some of the things that we can anticipate come Wednesday. And Bert, you would lead off in this conversation, but as we hear what's happening on Wednesday, viewers, you certainly can call in and let us know your views on the discussions or any other points that you would like to make. But what can we expect on Wednesday, Bert?
Okay, glad to give the information that this year Medi will be held in the parish of St. Patrick's, Sotes proper. We would start our march at the McDonald's College and end up at Fur Pasture where we would have our rally. Right? All the unions participate. We make it somewhat of a competition because people come out in their pretty shirts and their colors and their placards and hope that the lawyers are not looking. So we do that, which is somewhat of a fun time, old mass. It's serious matters, but we treat it that way. And that's one of the attractions of May, that you deal with serious matters in a comical way, right? And that's why workers like to take part. That starts at 9 at McDonald College grounds, and then we proceed on. We have, over the years, alternated the parishes. In fact, we had a standard of going in an anti-clockwise direction. So if we had St. George this year, we would go St. David's, then St. Andrew, St. Patrick. So we know him St. Patrick. We did have some breaks because of COVID and other issues where we had to stay in St. George for 2 years, I think. But we're back on the sweep, and soon we should be in Carriacou also. We've never had a meeting in Carriacou, but we're looking forward to that. For the members of the unions, the order, which is important to some of them, the order of the march would be the GMMIW, which is Grenada Manual Maritime and International Workers Union. They would be first. The PW would be second, which is Public Workers Union. CIW, Commercial and Industrial Workers Union, third. Dowe would be fourth, Technical and Allied Workers Union. The Seamen and Waterfront Workers Union would be fifth. The Grenada Union of Teachers, sixth, and the Bank and General Workers Union, seventh. After the march, we would normally have some speeches. Hopefully, we would try to keep them not too long. We have had problems in the past with speeches being too long. And those speeches would normally come from the presidents of each union, would make a speech to address his members and the public. The Minister of Labor normally graces us and does a speech. We lucky this year to have a visitor, which is from the ILO, International Labour Organization, the Director for Caribbean Affairs. He happens to be here around this time, had a series of meetings, I think, today, and he would grace us with his presence on May Day, and we would ask him to say a few words to the workers, and that's from the international body which represents labor. We would then have the feature address by the president of the TUC, Brother Andre Lewis, also the senator representing labor in the upper house. So that would be the keynote address or the feature address. Following that, as is normal, the unions would go their separate ways to entertain and indulge their members. So those are the serious matters first, and then we come to the fete matter, which the workers enjoy. And those fetes are not held together. Each union does its separate item, and they would inform the workers where that is. So people who pass can normally join in, right? We don't refuse anybody. Definitely my union doesn't refuse anybody, but because we see it as an open labor day, and once we have stuff, we would share it, right? So those are the items that are for the official part of the day. It may be helpful just to say some of the things we would be speaking to, the various unions would be speaking to. The obvious big matter, precarious employment, the issue of contract work, the illegal issue of these temporary situations, persons working 26.6 years as a temporary worker, working every day, and then being told that you are a temporary worker, or you are a non-worker or a non-employee or something like that. And that we see as the biggest problem affecting the workers in Grenada, meaning a big section of the population in the private and public sector can't go to a bank. So that can't be good for the economy. So that we see as one of the biggest issues. We know that there is pension reform on the tables. We thought actually that was done with after the elections, but we know that work is going in, and documents are circulating, has been circulated to the TUC and some of the individual unions relating to pension reform, a matter which we thought the elections had put an end to, right? But that's happening, and that there should be some discussions.
When you say pension reform, are we referring to a proposal where there is a contributory portion to pension?
Yes, and why I'm saying that prior to the election, and we can't ignore elections, it's the most important thing in Grenada. Right? In the history of Grenada. Prior to the elections, there were no parties talking about reforms just before the elections. In fact, some parties would have campaigned that public servants would get their pension. That was the campaign. That was a campaign promise.
But is it fair to believe that, let's say government, for example, can, or any set of statutory bodies, can afford a pension where there's no contributions from employees?
Well, then you shouldn't say it. So I'm saying, is it fair to say it?
No, I'm talking practical now. I would like to focus on the worker. The worker who goes home without a pension.
Yes.
Right? We need to address that worker. Yeah. I'm not going to play politics. I'm not in the party politics. But let us say, how can we get that worker who now is not receiving a pension and not eligible for a pension to get a pension alongside the NISP?
And we're talking public service.
I'm speaking in probably every form of employment where there's no pension.
Okay, let me answer you this way. One of the reasons that the government, and I'm quoting here the present Prime Minister, is breaking the law, and it didn't start with this government, obviously. The reason why you have so much contract workers, and you have so much workers that you refer to as non-workers, and you have so much workers that stay on a one-year contract for 26 years, is because that these workers, you don't want these workers to get pension. That is the basis of the problem. That's number one. So that's straight.
Well, pension or benefits?
Pension. And it's the reason why workers are not being made into positions that are permanent positions or established positions.
But we see the same thing in the banks, for example. So when we address workers, I want us to be holistic as to addressing workers.
I'm talking now about pension reform.
Not holistic.
I'm talking now about pension reform. And the pension reform is not in the private sector or the banks. It is with government. So let's just go into that. And I'm saying that it was wrong, because we know that if you are a public servant by law, and the court said so, you are entitled to a pension. The other thing is, if you are doing a permanent activity in a job, the laws of Grenada say that you are a permanent employee.
That's correct.
Therefore, so that is being broken, and I'm saying it would have been fair to us to say, okay, look, we have to reform pension. But don't tell us that the pension matter is solved. We're going to get our pension. And no, we hear that we're discussing a pension that workers have to pay for. And no discussions are being had on the issue of how are the workers who work the 25 years already are going to be entitled, because they have worked 20 years in a position that is a permanent position, and that is on the books of Grenada when the budget is read as an established position. Because even if the position is not filled, when the budget is read, the positions, and by law that has to happen. So I'm saying that is going to be a matter that obviously there's going to be a lot of discussion on this matter, and it may be reflected in our placards and and the speakers on the day. Another issue, again, migrant workers. I have gone to a store and seen only Spanish-speaking persons. It has happened to me. So I'm not talking what people tell me. I've gone to a store in the south of the island, and there were two persons that were cashing that could speak English, not local persons, and then the rest of persons out on the store floor were talking some other language. I don't know foreign languages, so I don't know what they were speaking. But they were speaking foreign languages. And I'm being told that there are a good amount of Spanish-speaking migrants who are coming to Grenada. I'm not sure if they have work permits or they're getting work permits.
Or they're Grenadians.
Or they're Grenadians. Well, I didn't know these, put it this way. Right. So that is another issue.
But how are you going to address, quite quickly, we had the CARICOM heads of government at the last sitting, moving by June 30th, I think it was the date given, for the free movement of people throughout the region. How would the unions address this?
We have always said that if you have the free movement of goods, you can't have Caribbean unity. If you have free movement of goods, so we buy everything we get from Jamaica and Trinidad, we should be able to go to work there. So it has failed so far. Let me put it this.
But the agreement was for free movement of people, recognizing the movement.
But that part, so the goods got by.
Right.
But we have never been able to move freely. So I would welcome the free movement of people. So when person from the Caribbean come to Grenada, then I can go to look for work in Barbados because.
But is that consistent with your previous statement of you hear Spanish people speaking, because they happen to be speaking Spanish or otherwise?
No, but
they could be speaking Trini, they could be speaking Guyanese.
I know of no Spanish people in the OECS. Do we have any Spanish people speaking people in the? Well, Cuba is an observer status.
Well, I don't think the question is really about whether.
Not OECS. I'm speaking CARICOM.
Mm-hmm. We have some persons in Belize. I think you've been to some persons in Belize understand a dual language, right? The official language is English, right? But you have a lot of Spanish people. But the people that I have seen,
I'm not hanging on the Spanish. I'm talking about the union's receptivity to non-Grenadians coming in to hold positions.
We've never had that problem. We have the displacement issue. So, for example, all the years we know, the hoteliers in Grenada, they would bring in foreigners and pay them more to do the same work. That's just something that has happened. It has happened. It's happening still. And I can go into, we don't have the time to go into the specifics.
But doesn't that seem to be contradictory? In other words, you're saying you're bringing in a foreigner to pay them more to do the same work, but then we were talking about profiteering earlier. That would diminish your profits.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
It doesn't.
So it means that there is something else. There's something else there because
there's a lot that I don't know.
Intuitive.
In other words, and one of the things I can tell you, one of the things, even if you bring in a foreigner and you pay the foreigner more, but because you generate the work permit for the foreigner, if you ask the foreigner to work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, which happens? Let me see, which happens? So these migrant workers, some of them are seriously exploited. And I can't stand up for that. I can't stand up for that. So I'm saying, but there is a problem. It is the first time in the history of Grenada I've seen a good amount of non-English speaking migrants coming in. Right? We used to have Guyanese in the oldies. We used to have even some Trinidadians. Right? But it's the first time I've seen that, and I've seen it with my own eyes. So that is an issue that I don't think we should be silent on it. And if it's that we doing charity and helping these people, say so. Don't let them slide in under the door, or you just see them displacing local workers.
And what? Because I mean, we say Spanish. There are a number of people of Asian descent up and down the OECS as well.
I don't think the concern is, I think Brother Butt might have used the term Spanish, but I don't think the concern is about the language that they speak.
Right.
I don't think the concern is that they're foreign, because Grenadians move abroad, and we enjoy great jobs. We have Grenadians all across the world. I think the concern is, are they coming in properly? Are they coming in legally? And there's a displacement issue in the sense that they're coming in, they're foreign, they've received a job, they're going to work and do the kind of jobs perhaps that, because we have unionized workers here, may not necessarily be able, the employer may not be able to ask them to do it in the same manner. So you're exploiting these people, and at the same time you're undermining your core labor force and displacing them. We have and it creates a lot of unease, discomfort, and problems in the workforce. Even when we look at our general hospital, and we're very, very happy for the foreigners who come to serve in our island. And I'm not going to try to create a diplomatic war by calling any names or any nationalities. But you see those people coming here, getting better pay, getting better remuneration and emoluments, and you have Grenadians working alongside them, doing the jobs. Because they can't work with our local people, without our local people, because we need to work as interpreters. And then the disparity and it could.
How can that happen? Is what I'm getting. I'm confused here.
What do you mean? How can it happen?
Yes.
So you want to throw that back on? Are you saying that labor is allowing it?
No. I'm not saying labor is allowing it.
It's happening because it's happening. It's happening because employers are doing it. It's happening because our government is doing it, for instance.
Paying
and one would want
someone else more.
Yes.
Rather than hiring the cheaper labor?
But it happens, Colin. It happens. We see it. You may see someone come in and they're, okay, I was speaking to someone at an institution, not even a government institution this week. And I've been relating to that person for the last number of years in their job. And I've had to try to relate to their supervisor. For a month, I was trying to relate to their supervisor, and I could not. Not because I didn't initiate the contact. So I asked, but why weren't you given the position as supervisor? I mean, I'm asking the worker, they're not going to answer me. But that person has come outside of the institution, gone into the institution, and is receiving a better pay package than workers who have been there laboring. And you would wonder, why didn't the institution see fit to promote one of them? And from my experiences, I don't think, I'm not happy with that person. I don't think they're doing the institution well because I've moved my business. And if I've had that experience, it stands to reason that other persons have also had the same experience. So it's not something that is new. It's not something that's just happening. We see all these different factors playing out in our labor force and in the labor market. We see it.
Is it a case where the salary might be more, but the remuneration is actually less?
No, absolutely not. Because if you're paying someone housing, if you're making sure that they're living in air-conditioned comfort, most of us do not. If their work hours are a little bit less, if we still have to work alongside them so that they can do the job, it means we're also doing part of their job because they can't do their jobs without us. And we're grateful for them. But we're saying if we're prepared to do that for foreigners, if we're prepared to give them the cushy jobs, if we're prepared to go one step further in terms of how we remunerate them, why aren't we doing it for local people? So the case of the migrants is not seeing non-Grenadians coming into our shows because that has always happened. It's seeing the disparity in terms of how they're coming, that's one, and how they're remunerated.
We do have a caller online, so let's take that caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Good evening.
Go ahead, yes, welcome.
Yeah. In connection with the hospital, if you remove the foreign workers from the hospital, you have to close down the hospital. Thank you.
The comment there is that in relation to the hospital, if you remove foreign workers from the hospital, you'd have to close down the hospital. That was the comment.
And that's a great comment. And the question would be, why aren't we as a country and society ensuring that we train our people to ensure that we have the cadre of professionals that we need? Because if we have to close down our hospitals because we have non-nationals and non-English speaking people running our hospitals, we have a problem. So thank you, caller, for identifying one of the greatest problems that we have in our country right now.
We have been training.
And we're allowing our professionals to leave, or train people. We're training them to leave. And we're watching them bleed out of the system. And we seem content to ensure that persons who are not familiar with our culture, with our way of life, and are coming into our country and having to be running our hospital. That's the $1 million problem that you've just confronted here tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just, because we're talking hospital, we're talking healthcare, national health insurance. This is something that the TUC and trade unions in general should take on because it's been too long and it just has not happened.
Don't use take on. Don't use take on. In that the first entity in Grenada to ask and insist that there be national health insurance would have been the trade unions. In fact, that goes back more than 24 years. I say that because I've been involved with full-time in the union for 24 years now, and I've been involved with the TUC for longer than that. And at every election we have a charter, and in every one of those charters, going back more than 24 years, we've been asking that there be national health insurance because the workers we represent have it. All right? But the majority of workers in Grenada at all levels have no health insurance, and a lot of people die because there's no, I want to repeat, a lot of people die because there's no health insurance. So we are not the convinced. In fact, we are the persons who
will there be placards on Wednesday representing this as well as a serious national issue that has to be addressed for workers?
That is a possibility, but to be very honest with you, one of the issues, even at the TUC level, the TUC doesn't generate placards. The majority of the workers who are there have health insurance, right? So whereas the TUC, we see it as a main item. We don't tell the unions what to write on their placards, but most of them have health insurance. But it is an issue that anytime we get a chance to talk about it, in fact, during the last administration, there was a lot of talk about it until we heard, and I know what I'm speaking of. It started the way we have a social program, the NIS. It started in that sort of field and let us say likeness, but then it ended up as a private sector something. At the end, when it filtered out and when it disappeared, it was a lot different from what was, in fact, what the research and what we paid. I won't say the amount, what we paid the University of the West Indies to investigate and suggest, right? What almost happened was completely different to that. And I'm not speaking here from not knowing or what people say. I'm speaking because I would have read the documents, right? So we're very disappointed that there's no health insurance in Grenada, a matter we've been asking for maybe almost 3 decades, and we really want to blame all those who have been in office that it is not with us yet.
But if I may interject here, Colin, in 2018, I think it was 2018, but you can correct me, it might have been 2018 or 19, no, I think no, 2019, there was a national symposium that was held to consult on a national health insurance. Unions were invited to participate. As usual, we got kind of a hasty notice. I participated on behalf of my union. I ensured that I was sleepless for the entire night before to peruse that document. What we will never support, we will support national insurance. It is necessary. What we will never support is a national insurance plan that seems to gravitate towards benefiting the executives, the administrators, as we've been taught at the earlier part of our conversation, where in general there's always seemed to be a class that seems to benefit out of any arrangement that involves people. And that health insurance, we were not certain that it was tailored properly, and some of the discussions and so that came out of it, we were not certain that was going to be taken on board. Recently I heard Prime Minister talking about having to hold again a symposium, and I thought to myself, we've done that. I know this new administration would have to do that as well, but there was a symposium that was held before. It's the same Grenada, so are we going to be looking at that? Are we going to be looking at that document by JIPA? That's the name of the outfit, and that outfit will continue to be paid long after the symposium. I think they're still employed by the state of Grenada under a different administration. So yes, we will support it. I've had to be in the hospital, like I said, a couple of days with a relative who's visiting from abroad, and it was difficult to be there. So we will support that. I will support that. My union will support it, but we will never support any kind of condition that seems to favor a cabal or seems to favor creating an insurance structure that a lot of people is going to make a lot of money off of little people, and the protections and what's provided for persons in the society across the board is not sufficient. We'll also support pension reform, where every Grenadian attaining the age of 60 or 65 should get a pension, regardless of where you worked. And so pension reform, what we expected, was not going to be about the public service, because there's a pension plan in place for the public sector, 1958. What we expected to see this administration talking about is a national sort of a pension scheme that Trinidad enjoys, that Barbados enjoys, that so many of our OECS and CARICOM counterparts enjoy, so that regardless to where you work, you've lived in Grenada, you've contributed, and you pay taxes, and when you retire, 60 or 65, you should be getting something from the state.
Beyond NIS.
That's where, yeah, that's beyond NIS, because other countries are doing it. And if we're going to move, and we seem to want to move wherever globalization is going, we should be moving there. And we should not have the knee-jerk reaction in Grenada that says a pension from the state, and how are we going to do it? And I saw that knee-jerk reaction from you tonight that says we're not going to contribute. I think we have to get out of that place where we were thinking for what was it, 38 years or 33 years? Pension is going to drain the state. It's going to sink us under the sea. And so we should never be considering it. I think we have to get out of the piss-poor mentality that says the state should not think about securing its seniors. That's my thinking on this matter. Invite me another time, I'll expound.
No problem. Cephas, as we close, you would want to have a word with your members prior to Labor Day, so you have the opportunity.
Of course, of course. It's always a pleasure to listen to Daisy talk, you know. I encourage them to come out on May Day, on Wednesday. With the TUC, I think we important that we remain cohesive, that we stick together. that we support one another, solidarity. And once again, I encourage my brothers to come out in the force on Wednesday and show support and so on and enjoy ourselves. It's our day.
All right. Daisy, to your members?
Members, come out. We know you've been coming to the Union Hall for your T-shirt in droves. Husbands, come out. Wives, come out. We have persons who come out over the years. They're not a part of our union, but a part of our union family. Children come out as well. So we're encouraging you, all of our members, to come out. We have a brilliant display planned for Grenada, for Labor Day, for our workers. And so we just encourage you, come out, celebrate Labor. St. Patrick's, we're going to be at the arena after the march. After the serious business, we're having fun in the arena. So come on out, workers of the PWU. Yeah.
Bert, you have to address all of the workers.
I have to address all the workers. So sadly, Dowe workers know what they expect, or is expected of them, and they expect from us. And we would communicate to them, and we have communicated to them all the information as to what I'd like to join with the other two, your other two guests here, our members, that it is a day for everybody and all workers. And just to say that it is a fun day, but a really serious day. We didn't get to speak to all the matters we wanted to speak about. Just one I would just want to mention, if you bear with me, which is development that is happening, where we saw one of our sister unions in recent weeks having a vigil and carnage, right? And that is in relation to a matter of profit sharing. And let me see, the brother spoke to war. That is a war that is beyond us. What is happening there is an ideological war that people feel, no matter what you have in a contract, no matter if somebody purchased a business with that in place, they believe that profit only belongs to one man. And even if you have profit sharing for the past 50 years in an agreement, that profits do not belong to anybody but the owner. And we will fight that. We must fight that. It is not the first time it has come up. This will be the third time it has come up. But it is not going away. And it is always non-Grenadian employers that are fighting us on this. So just look, whether it was Grenada Breweries or whether it was Howard's, as the case may be now, although they have both have local shareholders, minimum local shareholdings, or if it would have been when you had the Trinidad Bank purchase Bank of Commerce, Grenada Bank of Commerce. In all these activities, there's one factor. It is not Grenadian owners that are fighting against workers because they see that as something wrong. It's an ideological war that continues from the revolution to now. So I just want to refer to that, right? That it might be a few workers, but it is a big thing because they're coming for us. Okay. They're coming for us. So thanks again for entertaining us here tonight, and we hope that our listeners enjoyed what we said and gained some sort of knowledge out of what we said here tonight.
Mr. Bert Patterson, Daisy Hazard, Cephas Chase, thank you very much for joining us and sharing about the May Day celebrations, but beyond that, Labor in Grenada. And to you, the viewers, it is an absolute pleasure always having you join us on a Monday evening and sharing part of your Monday evening with us. So until next time, I certainly look forward to you joining this program again, 6 days, 22.5 hours from now. Have yourselves a good evening. Godspeed.